This is the Couples Corner. The Couples Corner. This is the Couples Corner. Team Evans. This is the Couples Corner. The Couples Corner.
The Couples Corner with Team Bevins of I Still Do Ministries every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is another episode, and today you will get some good information, some great nuggets, and some tools to strengthen your relationship. The Couples Corner with Team Bevins. All right, party people. How y'all feeling tonight? Welcome to the Couples Corner. I am Marcus, and my wonderful wife is Cherie, and she is not here with me tonight because tonight it is all about the husbands. And tonight we are talking about marriage from the husband's perspective. And I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to introduce our guests who were here last time, but we're doing part 2 tonight. And once we pray, then we'll get started, and we'll jump right into the conversation. So, Father, we thank you for another opportunity to gather together in the Couples Corner. We thank you, Lord, that you have allowed us, oh God, to be in the position to share, to love, to be with our loved ones, oh God. And we thank you that you have positioned us to be the best possible husbands that we can be, the best possible wives that they can be, oh God. And we thank you that you are giving us tools that we can use to cause our relationships to be strong, for them to flourish, and for them to have everything that they need. We look forward to what you're going to do tonight in the Couples Corner with and through every one of us, Lord. We thank you that you have gifted us, that you've anointed us, and that you have positioned us, oh God, to have longevity and for us to have the necessary ingredients that it takes for us to have a successful marriage and relationship. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So tonight our guests are 2 gentlemen who have been here before. They were on part 1 when we did marriage from the husband's perspective, and tonight we're doing part 2. So for those of you who are not familiar with the first part that we did, when we're done this, you can go back and look to see what you didn't hear the first time. But I'm grateful today to have with us a young man who's been married for a good couple years now. And he has some insight on marriage, as well as being a man, being a father, and, you know, functioning in a few other capacities. Both of them are men of God. They are not strangers to the Lord or to the Bible, to the way of the word, which is the principles of marriage. And so we want to make sure that we are presenting people who can give you sound information and not just feelings and emotions. So the first gentleman I want to introduce is Mr. Jermaine Jones, and he can tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello, everyone.
I'm
Jermaine. I've been married now for 5 years. I have 2 beautiful children as well, and I love the Lord, and I love the journey of marriage that I have now embarked upon.
All right, good stuff. The next gentleman that we have with us here tonight, that was a very political answer. Very nice, very nice. Are you running for office? That was beautiful.
Yeah.
The other gentleman that we have with us tonight is another gentleman that has been married for some while, and pretty much all of the stuff I just said before, you know, I'm letting them tell you about themselves, so, you know, that's what we got. This gentleman is Mr. Dante Thomas, also known as Rock. A little about yourself, sir.
Hey, what up? Rock Mel in the house. Been married for 19 years.
That's a blessing, brother.
Beautiful. Yeah, 19 years. Wife is lovely. You know, ups and downs, but as long as you keep God first over everything, you know, in your marriage, all things will work out. You know what I mean? But I'm happily married. I love the fun that comes with it. I love the caretaking that comes with it. I love the back rubs that come with it, and all the other beautiful things that come along with this thing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
All right, so tonight, gentlemen, we have the task of keeping it 100 from the husband's perspective. This is not something that is a challenge for either of you to do, and so as a result of that, we are going to jump into a few topics, and we're going to share some things. For those of you who are with us on social media. Feel free to chime in with any questions or concerns that you have. Feel free to share this on your page as well with people who you think can benefit from the conversation, people who are married and would be able to gain some insight and some understanding, some nuggets, and some people who need to hear from someone. If you are a man and you're watching this, you need to make sure that your wife, your fiance is watching so they can hear some things from another man and will understand that it's not just you who feels that way or thinks that way or all of that good stuff. So gentlemen, we're going to touch on a couple subjects, a couple topics tonight. And the first one that we're going to jump into, because we're living in a real world, in a society where people have an issue with being consistent. They have an issue with being content. And so my first question tonight is, what makes you stay married in a culture that quits so easy?
Well, I'll go. What makes me stay married? First of all, you gotta, I love my wife. That's
Right.
number one. Number two is, it's so easy to quit. You know what I mean? Anybody can quit.
Right.
In anything, but the whole thing is, will you go through the storm to make sure that you sustain what it is that you're doing? Because you don't say I do just to say I don't.
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean? You say I do to continue to go through the journey, go through the course of what it is, and journey and I would say marriage is an investment. You know what I mean? It's an investment where, things are going to go up and down. Because if everything was smooth, you know what I mean? If everything was showing enough smooth, with you and your wife, then you would not know what your strengths are for you to be able to overcome whatever it is that affects both of you.
Right.
So I would say, just being consistent in it, you got to believe in it.
Right.
You got to believe in the one that you married, because there's a lot of things that you can turn away from, or that we have turned away from, that our spouses should be able to pick it up. And if they can't pick it up, then they can have learned behaviors that come along with that. So communication is key, but quitting is easy. Staying on it and going the journey is what, winning the battle is all about to me.
That's good stuff.
What keeps me consistent is because I understand the significance and the value of making a commitment unto God.
Okay.
And because I understand that it is incumbent upon me that I keep the vow that I made with God. And I also confirm that in word to my wife as well, when we were being married. So I think what makes me stay consistent is because I don't want to end up being a statistic, because I did not put forth and wasn't willing to sacrifice what it takes in order to survive this journey. And that's the thing that I've definitely understood in this short time about marriage, is that it's a journey.
Right.
And the enjoyment of the journey is being able to defeat those situations and circumstances that come to not only test us, but also come to see whether or not we're really in it to win it.
Right.
And we're really willing to keep that same commitment unto God as we do as well to our wives.
Good stuff. I think that is very important that we understand that our commitment in the yes that we gave was not contingent upon any other factors.
Right.
It was a decision that we solely made ourselves, that did not have to be based on, oh, I'm going to stay married if she's a good wife. I'm going to stay married if she cooks, or I'm going to stay married if she talks to me right. Like, our decision was a decision that we made without including them.
Right.
Their behavior, what they bring to the table, all of that is a addition to our decision. But we can't go back on our decision because we don't like what we're getting
Right.
at the table. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we live in a culture today where quitting is so easy and people will throw in the towel. They feel like I don't have to take this and, you know, this, that, and the other. But that's completely not true.
Right.
And so because we live in a society that is so fast paced, so microwave, anytime something is not the way you want to do it, you just throw the whole thing away and just try it again or do something different or live any old kind of way you want to live without honoring the vow that you made. And I think that sometimes we forget the importance of making a vow.
Right.
We forget the importance of making a commitment and a covenant. So I think that sometimes when that is not the understanding that you have going into it, because I really believe that nowadays a lot of people are getting married with the notion and the pretense of this is just a glorified boyfriend.
Right.
This is a glorified girlfriend. So there's no covenant here. There's no real, you know, commitment here. If I don't like it, if they say one thing,
I'm out.
you know, they one and done. You got one time to make me mad. You got one time to upset me. You got one time to let me down, and I'm gone. I'll go find somebody else because it's somebody else that want to treat me right.
Yeah.
It's other people that will do right by me. And so that mentality is no good for marriage.
Yeah,
Can
marriage
I-
is not a vehicle. You just can't trade it in.
Hello.
And can I would like to add to what you're saying as well. I believe that we live in a culture now where people they're approaching marriage based upon potential.
Right.
I believe that if you get married based upon potential, your marriage is already defeated.
That's
Very
a
true.
word. That's good.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Because potential
when
does not
we
always
marry
become
them,
reality.
Right. And when we say yes to God and we say yes to our spouse, we're literally saying in that moment, I accept you
Right.
for exactly how you are in this moment. Meaning, if anything gets worse from that moment, whether it be health, whether it be
Finances.
whether it be a diagnosis of mental illness or anything of that nature, I'm saying to you that my love is unconditional for you. And whatever state that you may find yourself in, I have to still learn to be content. That's what the Bible says, and make sure that I take upon whatever that burden may be or whatever the blessings that come with me being in relationship and being in marriage with you as well.
Very good. So if we be honest, you know, part of what we have, you know, and we mentioned this a little the last show that we talked about. Part of what we're facing today is an honor issue in marriage. There's an honor issue because we have created an issue. Men are out of place, right? We're out of place in our children's lives in many cases because every father, their child is not with their wife. Some have children with a woman and they're not even married, or, you know, some are married, but they have a child elsewhere or whatever.
Right.
And as a result of that, women feel like they are single parenting, even if they aren't, because the man doesn't live in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So that creates a mentality in survival where they get into survival mode and feel like, well, I now don't need a man. Me and my child have been able to do this, or they've been in other relationships and now, you know, they're just functioning and living and they're successful as a single independent woman. And so when they decide that I want to get married, they're getting married, but submission can sometimes be a challenge when the mentality of women is I'm a boss. So it's hard to be a boss lady or whatever you go by, you know, and then be submissive to your husband. It takes special characteristics to know how to turn that light switch on and off, when to be the boss and when to be the helpmate, when to be in charge and when to help. And that be in charge does not mean that you're never in charge in your marriage, because if we be honest, there are many areas and categories in our relationships that our wives are in charge or responsible for. So it's not a thing of you're never in charge because you're a wife or you're a woman. No, that's not smart. That's not smart for any man to be in that type of predicament where his wife has no areas that she's responsible for or in charge of or whatever. But that's not what we're talking about. But nonetheless, that mentality of being so self-sufficient, being such a boss, or being, you know, all of that, it can cause you sometimes to miss the fact that you are you still have to be a wife. So as a man, as a husband, how can one, combat that when he's dealing with a woman that struggles with that light switch?
I would say first, communication, setting down with each other, and when I don't want to call it knowing your role, because then that when a person say they know their role, it's like, okay, I don't have room to say this, but I would say the whole thing is communication of whatever the situation might be. Now, because I have a young lady in my family that that's been self-sufficient for a long time. And when she finally, got married to a husband, she did not know how to turn it off, which caused problems between them because he's trying to do what he can do as a husband, but she leave him no room to be the man.
Hello.
She left him no room to be the man. And, it took time. I mean, she still may have that switch going on and off, but at first it was flickering, it would just flicker,
Right.
But now, she flicker, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, but because she grew up independent for a very, very long time,
Right.
and then when she finally some women feel like because they've been doing it for a long time, they don't even recognize the strength of a man that's coming to rescue them and take them off their feet to give them rest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Take
To give them that rest that they're looking for, but yet because they can't recognize it, their switch is always on. But when that switch gets turned off, they'll be able to be a little bit more at ease. So I would say for me, the communication piece is key. Setting down with each other and having this conversation, even when she may have the wisdom and the understanding in the role, let's say paying bills.
Right.
If a man, he may say, you know what, you take role of this, I'm gonna bring the money home to you. But you got some dudes that don't want to bring the money home because he don't want to have the control over it. But she may be the one stronger in that area. So that's what you're talking about. Give her that room to have the authority to be able to pay the bills. I know some women on the line when we start ringing in on that, bring me the money. I can bring home the bacon, fried up in the pan. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's just my take on it. What you think?
I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I would just add one thing to that. I think the best way to deal with that is by communication and observation as well. And the reason why I say observation is because many times you have to observe exactly what kind of environment did your significant other come out of.
Right.
What was, quote unquote, the norm in that particular environment? Many times people's environments become a part of the fabric of their being.
Right.
And many times it can be challenging to not only understand, but knowing how to handle it at the same time.
Right.
And then what I had to learn is the environment that you grow up in doesn't necessarily have the power to say whether or not your environment was right opposed to somebody else's environment that they grew up in.
Exactly.
So that's the reason why I say observation, because if you are around your significant other long enough, you've dated for quite some time, you start to take note of different things that happen in environments. When you go around family functions, when you see how some of the friends of your wife, how they conduct themselves, different things that they do, I think it's a healthy thing for you to be able to see, because it can help you better communicate how it is that we can handle what may seem like challenging issues or challenging circumstances.
It's good.
That's good. That's definitely good. And so, in order for us to effectively grow in these environments, someone has to be willing to be a student and be a teacher. And I think in marriage, sometimes that's a struggle because we don't know how to switch roles. We don't know how to be the teacher and then turn around and be the student.
We think that we're always the teacher or we're always the
That's
student.
great.
And that's not always good, because there's some areas that are not your strength, that is your mate's strength. And you need to be a person that is willing to allow them to be strong where they're
Right.
strong, and you follow, you know what I mean? Because they're going to get the better result. And we can't allow, as men especially, we can't allow our pride to get in the way and say, oh, I'm the man. Like, if you have to say you the man, you're not.
Right.
If you got to say I'm the husband, you're not.
Mhm.
Because your position and how you operate and function in that position would demand the type of respect that you deserve. But you're going to get the respect that you deserve
Yes.
based off of your performance. And that's just a reality. And many people have been unhappy in seasons and points of their relationship and never want to take ownership of their unhappiness. We always want to point the finger and say, oh, she don't do this, oh, he don't do this, when the reality is that you're unhappy because of your own performance. They are treating you the way that you deserve to be treated based off of your performance, not the way that you deserve to be treated off of your position.
Right.
See, we should be honoring each other because of the position, but we are treating each other according to performance.
That's a word.
And that's not always healthy. So here's another question to throw out there, and you guys chime in. We're going to jump on some of the comments in the section. In a second, not in a session, in a second. How important are your words and your tone towards your wife, good or bad?
Well, I had to learn that. I had to learn that because, you know, I've been in a leadership role all my life.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'm talking about, and I ain't even talking about spiritual, I'm talking about job wise,
Right.
that I've always been the leader. So the way that I get results is kind of like a coach through aggression, you know, and different things like that. Not that I walked around and yelled at my wife, but because I would say passionate about what it is, you know, even though my wife understood, she said, you know, she would explain to people, you got to be able to identify X, Y, Z. But when I get passionate about something, I begin to, you know, get a little, it seems aggressive, but I had to learn that it's called love language. I had to learn my wife's love language in the way that I'm talking to her. Now that I would say, hey, blah, 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 I wouldn't do that. Like when you were trying to crack on me earlier, I wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? But I know my wife likes when the conversation is calm.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? She likes when the conversation is calm. So I had to learn it, because you don't get nowhere going around yelling. You know what I mean? You don't get nothing. What you get is a shutdown.
Right.
And
Right.
you know, back in the day, and I'm just being transparent, back in the day when I was younger in marriage, you know, it wasn't healthy to walk around the house, you know, 3 and 4 and 5 days not speaking because you touched a button that should have never been touched because of wrongful communication. You know what I'm saying? So I thank God now that I understand how to open up the door to allow God to come in my life. And before I even speak with the passion that I used to speak with, you know, now I speak so calmly that it's so crazy. Now I speak so calmly and I'm so humble with the way I do. Sometimes the information that's said to me don't cause for a response. And now when you don't respond, now it's, you know, if the wife is not as on the same spiritual level as you are, it can seem like you shutting down, but it's not you shutting down. You're waiting for the words to be able to say, so it don't cause nothing to go wrong in the relationship.
That's good.
I will be so transparent right now. That was and still is a developmental area for me. I'm much better
That's
than
good.
where I used to be. I was a lot like you, very passionate with my approach. Mark has known me for a long time. Many people that know me, they would think that I am trying to belittle or talk down to them just because of my tone. But that was not my intent when I was trying to convey my message out of passion.
Mhm.
Now, I believe there's a distinct difference with me when I'm talking with passion and when I'm leaning on you. It's two different things.
Mhm.
But what I've learned is, one, God doesn't honor me talking passionate to my wife in a way that she may interpret as being disrespectful. That's something that I learned. It took a long time for me
That's
to
good.
learn,
Mhm.
but I was man enough to embrace. And I understand now that a soft answer really does turn away wrath. And it's all about timing.
Right.
And I believe one thing that I was very passionate about, I don't know if you were the same way or not, but one thing that I was passionate about is I don't like the feeling of tension.
Mhm.
I don't like the nonverbal actions.
Right.
You may not be saying nothing, but I'm reading body language
Yeah,
real
that's
good.
important.
Right.
I know that it's something that's not right, that's bothering you. But one thing that I've learned is timing is everything.
Definitely.
And everybody does
Definitely.
not handle problems or challenging moments the same way.
Right.
Some people, you got to give them some time.
Right.
And me, I like to go at it right then and there because I just want to kill that
you
moment
wanna
so
fix
we
it
can
now.
get over it.
Mhm.
But what I
Mhm.
had to understand is I cannot always approach those moments based
same
upon
way.
how I'm feeling in the moment.
Right.
So that has really helped my wife and I, and our communication has gotten so much better. And when you really study
Mm-hmm.
your spouse,
Mhm.
your spouse will teach you a lot of lessons that she may not ever articulate out of her mouth.
Right. Right.
But I learned to understand body language. I understand her love language, and I understand when it's the appropriate time to address whatever it is. But the biggest blessing that I've gotten out of this journey when it comes to the way that I communicate is knowing whether or not it even needs to be addressed.
That's major. So here's my I don't know what to call it. I have always been what they would consider a silent killer, right? You're not gonna catch me out of control where I'm all upset and I'm flipping stuff over, doing all that. That's not my style. Never
Right.
been my style. But I can cut you so deep with my words that you could bleed to death. So I understand that, and I'm very clear on that. And so I have always been very intentional with my words. So if I ever harmed you with words, it was intentional. I am very specific in the word choices that I
That's
select
good.
when I
That's good.
speak. And so that has been my entire life. So speaking has never been a challenge for me, right? So some may think that communication could have been a challenge for me. Even my wife and I have addressed this plenty of times, that I don't communicate often. But what my teaching method was growing up is you don't volunteer information. That came from having older brothers. That came from street code. You just don't volunteer information.
That's
You
right.
answer the question that's asked, and that's it.
True Bill.
That's it.
True
You see what I'm
Bill.
saying?
That's right.
And that's
True Bill.
that's what I did. That was a strength for me.
Right.
Now, it was not a strength for my marriage, but it was a strength for me growing up.
Right.
So that was the way that I grew up. So I had to learn how to communicate better in that area, right? So, but being aware of how I communicate and how intentional my words can be and what damage they can do, I have always been very aware of that. So I'm very specific, and I'm very specific in how I speak, in the words that I choose, and all of that. So as a result of that, I have limited many arguments that were started by me,
Mhm.
right? I also have facilitated many arguments that have been ended by me, by my choice of words.
Right.
There are some things that I did not address because if I addressed it, it would have gone bad. Understanding that I'm talking to my wife, and so I'm not going to respond to my wife like I would one of y'all if you said
Right.
something.
Right.
Because as men, we're going to address it differently.
Right.
There are going to be some terms. There's going to be, some harshness that come
Yeah.
with it. You know what I mean? And it might even have to be some follow-up physically
Mm-hmm.
that go with it, because that's the way that we deal with things as men.
Right.
But the challenge is, how do you as a man deal with a woman that talks like a man? because our response to a man is completely different than one that you would respond to your wife. But when your wife chooses words and terms and presentation that reminds you that of a man, that will force your hand to feel like you challenging me.
Mhm.
This is not a conversation. You testing my manhood now.
Mhm.
And so now when I want to respond, my response is not to my wife. My response is to the dude that is saying something to me.
Yeah.
Hello.
You see what I'm saying?
Hello.
And so sometimes I think that in marriage, those are the areas that we end up trying to figure out, how did this get so bad? How did this go so left? How did we get so far into this when the actual matter was not that big? The actual matter was not that deep, but we went away from the actual topic to the presentation.
Right.
We went away from the real issue to deal with the way that this package was wrapped and delivered to me.
Mhm.
So, you know what I mean? That is a completely different thing. But it's important for us to know that what we say and how we say it to our wives is so important, because truth of the matter, we teach them how to communicate with us. We really do. Because if they can push buttons that we respond to, we teach them that in times of trouble, hit the panic button. Say this and this will get a response out of him. Say this and he will do this, or say this and he will shut up. Say this and he will walk away. So although they want responses, although they want solution, if they feel pinned up against the wall, they're going to hit their panic button.
Right.
But if you eliminate the panic buttons, then you eliminate the power that they have in the conversation to make you come out of character. Now, of course, we say nobody can make you. You make the choice of the decision. But if I give you the tools, if I give you the rocks to throw at me, I can't get mad that you hit me with a rock.
Right.
And at the end of the day, that's what we have to learn how to do in our relationships, is to make sure that we are not giving our spouses ammunition to throw at us, because we don't like the way it feels. Nobody likes the way it feels if something is being thrown at them, whether it's words, whether it's, you know, little slick actions, like you said, nonverbal communication. All of those things are factors. But in order for us to have effective communication, we have to establish some boundaries when times are good.
Mhm.
And that's something that we don't do often. We don't determine boundaries when times are good. So when we hit a rough spot, we know how to fight fair. But because we never establish boundaries, when we hit a rough spot, we fight, you know, it's
Gloves off.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
gloves off, it's alley fighting. And that's not healthy for our relationships.
Right.
So let's jump into a couple of these comments. We had a few going back up. So we'll look at a couple of these. And you all feel free to chime in with the things that you have to add to the conversation. We're getting to those now, so y'all be patient. Don't act like that. We're in here talking and we're enjoying ourselves. Y'all listening. So that's important. Let's get to a couple of these here. First one, let's go back up. Some of these are hellos. Bless your hearts. Hi, everybody. I said hi. We're saying it back from all of us. Bless your heart. And they are enjoying the producer in the background with all of his responses.
Is that what they are doing?
That's what they're saying. That's what they're
Bless
saying.
their hearts.
We had a few things that were reiterated, that were said. All right. Learning curve. All right. All right. Well, look here. Maybe I missed some stuff. Well, y'all say something else, because I don't really see something to say. Nonetheless, we're gonna move. We're gonna move on. Here's a question I think doesn't get enough attention, in especially because, like we talked about, in today's society where everybody kind of deals with stuff from a different perspective and a different avenue, all of that stuff. How should people prepare for marriage today? Because it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people that are engaged, that are about to get married, and how should they be preparing for marriage? There are a lot of people who are single who want to bae, even though they don't really, know how to be a bae. But how should they prepare for marriage today?
I'm listening to this. I'm trying to prepare.
I would say, first, don't skip marriage counseling.
Very good.
Don't skip it. because there are some things that and questions that need to be or should be answered in marriage counseling that will help you along the way. That's number one. Number two, I would say is know that that is a decision that you want to make, because when you make that decision in your preparation, you don't want to turn back. You don't want to get into marriage and say, hey, I'm married and, you know, it didn't work out for a month, so I'm out of it. You know what I'm saying? You got to know that this is what you want. And I would say, you know, I learned some time ago, for females, make sure that you maintain the standard for yourself, you know, so that you can, you know, actually have the guy that's going to chase you, you know, into that covenant that we call marriage. For guys, I would say, you know, through the preparation, don't do all these outstanding things for your, you know, your fiance or your girlfriend in the beginning. And then as soon as you say, I do, you stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the chase is always better than the catch. So I would say, you know, after you chase them, you know, and you got them, keep chasing them. You know, go over and above what you did to get them.
Right. All right. I know you're about to answer. You're about to add to that, but I want to piggyback off of something that you said. It's another question. You answer it, but I got to get it out so we could deal with it. First, let me answer this question here. It said, not talking about me, but how do you fix it when you've been doing it wrong? The first thing with communication, if you've been doing it wrong, in fixing it is what you just established, that you understand that you've been doing it wrong, and then you figure out what's right. Figuring out what's right is figuring out what works for your relationship, what works for your mate. It's not just just do it this way that works. You have to know the person that you're communicating with, because communication is not effective if all someone is doing is talking. Effective communication is the information is being presented and who it's being presented to understands it and receives it. If they don't understand it and receive it, it's not effective communication. It's just talking. So sometimes we think that we are teaching people and we're just telling them and they don't get it. So the way to fix what's been done wrong dealing with that communication is to study who you're communicating with, to find out how they learn, how they receive, and what best fits them, so that you can present that information that way. And when you do that, then it changes the dynamic of your relationship. You made a statement. I hope that answers your question. You made a statement about not doing stuff that, you know, you're not going to be able to keep up with. The question I want to throw out there, and then we'll jump into it after he gets finished answering the portion of it that he was going to answer. How do you deal with a false representative? The person that they showed you or told you that they were, whether it be in dating and engagement, even in the beginning of the marriage during that honeymoon stage phase, and then that drops off, and then they become a settled person. How do you deal with that? Because there are many people who feel like they faked me out. They made me think that they were this type of person. They made me think that they lived this type of way. They made me think that they conducted themselves this type of way. And now that we are really in the thick of things, that's not who they really are. And now I am not stuck, but I am committed to someone who gave me a representative that was not accurate. But go ahead with what you were going to say, then we'll jump back into that.
Okay. So I'm answering the preparing for marriage part, right? I would advise one, especially if you are a believer of Christ, is to first pray and ask God, have you been called to the marriage ministry?
Watch yourself. You're talking good.
Everybody has not been called to be married. But if you have already done that and God has told you, yes, I've equipped you to be married, I would say one of the first things that you need to have as a priority on your list is to make sure that you are working on you.
That's a word.
to
You
be the best you that you can possibly be. Many times during our dating experiences, and even as men, when we are looking for our significant others, one of the things that we do not maximize is our time of preparation.
Right.
When we are single, that is our time of preparation, not only spiritually, but also naturally,
Mhm.
to deal with the inner things that we know that we need to rid of,
Right.
or we need to work on to make sure that they're up to par
Mhm.
when God gives us that opportunity to meet our significant others. The reason why many people have not only problems in marriage, but people don't get married is because some people are so selfish that they're
So
not
true.
willing
So
Mhm.
to
true.
work on themselves.
Mhm.
And then they want to get married and they want their husbands to be their father and to be their therapist all at the same time.
Hello.
Mhm.
And really, when that happens, you are now
Thank you.
possibly putting
Yes,
on an assignment on me that I'm not even equipped
Right.
to handle.
Yes, sir.
So I would definitely say pray. And for the ones that are thinking right now that they've been hurt or they've been misled
Mhm.
in the past, I would say take your time to be healed. And during that process, don't always be vulnerable to allow other people to come into your private space, and it taints the very mindset that
Mhm.
you need to be at in order for you to prepare yourself adequately to be a positive addition
Right.
to someone else.
Yep.
We as men, we're always looking for women that are going to be an asset
Right.
to us,
All right.
whether
Yeah.
we're doing it in the correct way
Mhm.
or the
Wrong.
incorrect
Yes,
way.
sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Women, be clear.
Yeah.
We want you to be an asset
Yes,
and
sir.
not a liability.
Yes,
Correct.
sir. Yes, sir.
Very good.
I passed it.
Very good.
Yeah.
So-
you trying to stop yourself. We know you want to go further.
Yeah,
We know-
I
we
feel
know
you.
do.
All right, so here we got a
I
question on the
passed
table. We got a question on the table. Specifically for any of you who may have gotten married at an age or time that you may not have had marital examples and married friends. Could you speak to your experience with that, becoming accustomed to being a married man, and how the presence or lack of marital examples and simply just married friends affected your ability to assimilate to become a married man? How important was it to have married friends specifically as a man, or was it not that big of a deal? I'll speak to that because I got married at a young age, and I did not have married friends at the time that my wife and I got married.
Amen.
So nor did, for me, I have a lot of success stories around me in marriage. My family did not produce a lot of success stories in marriage,
Mhm.
so I didn't have a great deal of examples to look at. I just knew what I was willing to do to make sure that mine worked. And so I was, for example, Jermaine and I were very close friends during the time that I got married, and I had to make a lot of changes and adjustments when I got married. And I had to lose a lot of things in order for me to be married. And that lose things is not so much in the aspect of losing them in a negative sense, but it was a decision that I had to make, and it was
Amen.
some of the toughest decisions that I had to make. We were traveling and doing music and doing all of that, and I had to make a decision that I was going to not allow my outside music ministry to come before my marriage. So I had to let that outside music ministry go while we were in our prime. And I didn't walk away when we were on our way out. I didn't walk away when we were doing bad. I walked away when we were in our prime, and it was for the sake of my marriage. And I didn't have a conversation with people about, this is why I'm doing it, this is how I'm doing it. It was a decision that I had to make. It was not one that I needed to consult with anyone about,
Hello.
but it was what was
Hello.
best for my relationship.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
And
sir.
it was what I did. I didn't
Yes,
have a lot of married friends. So my close friends were not married. So I ended up becoming distant from them because we were going in two different directions. We were doing now two different things. So it had nothing to do with our friendship. It had nothing to do with any love loss, but I had to make decisions based on what was going to be best for my relationship. As a result of it, I'm married in my 21st year. So it worked.
Amen.
But I had to make those decisions. I had to, to do the things that were necessary for that to, I had to, do the things that were necessary to make success be a part of my relationship. And, now my wife, that's a different story. Her parents were married since she was born, and she has a lot of success stories of marriage on her side, and so I kind of married into some success and was able to gain some nuggets and tools. And then I was taught how to be an effective man, an effective husband in my walk with Christ. And my pastor taught me a lot of things of how to be, productive and to function in that role. So if you don't have the right teachers around you, if you are not a student of marriage, and if you're not committed to making your marriage work at all costs, then it's very possible for your marriage not to work and for you to become that guy that's hanging with his friends instead of being home with his wife, for you to be that guy that got all these extracurricular activities that takes you away from your wife. And so that was my story, and that was kind of what kind of worked and happened in that area. So from the aspect of dealing with the people that feel like they had they felt like they got bamboozled. Basically, the person that they thought they were going to be with turned out not to be that same person. Let me say this and be clear on this. The first problem that you will have in marriage is if you get married for what your mate can do for you. That is going to be the first step in your marriage being bad, because what we have to learn about marriage is that marriage is a reflection of Christ in the church. And so with that understanding, God had designed, when he designed us, for him, but Christ came as what he was going to give, not what he was going to receive. And if you want to be married, you have to go into your marriage with the understanding of what I am going to give.
Right.
Going into your marriage with how I am going to make this woman's life better, how I'm going to make these children's lives better, how I'm going to make this man's life better, and not, well, I'm marrying them because they make me feel this way and they do this. Oftentimes we're concerned about all of the things that the person is bringing to the table. You need to assess that before you make the decision to give your all to someone who is bringing nothing to the table but a fork. So, but you need to make sure before you decide to show up at the table that you're showing up at the table to someone qualified to sit with you. People don't want to be honest and say that because you don't want to seem like you're arrogant, but you need to know who you are and what you're bringing to the table so that you're not showing up to a table with someone that only has a fork and they're only coming to eat. They're not bringing anything to the table. So know your value and show up to the table. Only show up to a table with someone that deserves to be at the table with you. And then the only reason you're at the table is to serve. And if you go into your marriage with the mentality that I am only here to serve this woman, I'm only here to make her life better, I'm only here to do for her, then in return, prayerfully, if she has that same mentality, you won't ever have to worry about you because she has you covered and you are only worried about her. That is how the perfect marriage works into the scenario. And if you are not approaching marriage that way, then you are going to find yourself in the woe it's me section of marriage, trying to figure out, well, I don't know why she don't do this and how this, because if you're spending all of your time picking apart everything they're not doing, I promise you there's a plethora of things that you're not doing that you could be better in, or things that you're not doing at all, but your focus is on them and what they're not giving you. But you did not get married, or should not have gotten married, just for what they are giving you. You should know what you're going to get when you get married, but I got married for what I'm going to give you.
Right.
Anybody want to add on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I know you kind of like said it all for real on that one. You know, there's no need to come back and try to punt the ball. You know what I mean? Try to punt the ball to us, but that you could have just ended that one with period.
Right. We might as well move on to the next question.
He could have ended that one with period. You know?
Selah. How about that?
Don't act like that. Don't act like that. All right, so here we go. This is a touchy subject. Not sure that we're going to be able to get through all of it, but we'll get the party started. Men parent different than women. So how do you convey the importance of your point as a father to a mother that specializes in love and not discipline?
Say the question one more time.
All right. Men parent different than women do. So how do you convey the importance of your point or your stance as a father to a mother that only specializes in love and not in discipline,
Well,
especially with a son?
okay, I'll use us for example. I believe first that, you know, I don't think there's nothing wrong with a mother loving her son the way that she do and trying to discipline him in such a way, but being soft about it. First, the dad has to be in the home, you know, to be able to be a part of that conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I would say is, though, the mother has to know, you know, through communication, you know, communicating with the father that, you know, her role in everything, there's certain age points that, you know, I believe that a son needs his dad,
Right,
for certain correction, and there's a certain point where the son needs his mom for the love part. That's what makes, you know, the marriage in the home works really, really, really good.
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because not saying that the father has to be always, he's the one that's throwing the punch, because you got some women that, you know, raise guys and they ain't no punks.
Right.
You know, because you got some strong women out here that really, really know how to discipline and love at the same time. You
Right.
know, but I would say, you know, in our role, you know, it's really, you know, all this goes back to the conversation and the communication between both, because, you know, my son loves to ride up and down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say he don't need to keep riding up and down the road coming from college and all this kind of stuff, burning a lot of gas, because he ain't paying for it.
Right.
You know, every weekend he's coming down. But again, that's the tonality that you was talking about earlier. But if you came at it and you know, with the aggression, or if I came at it with the aggression of like, she's my daughter, my wife is not my daughter, that's my wife.
Right.
But I would say just that communicating piece, you know, to get around that, you know, and then most of the time when after the decision is made, go back and let her know, not leave her out in the dark.
Yeah.
Because when both of y'all are working together as a team, the decision is more solid.
Right.
You know, so if my child says something like, you know, because children know how to play their parent. They know who's the soft one. They know who's they know who's the disciplinary.
Right.
They know that. So they'll know which questions to ask because they have learned behaviors from the parent.
Right.
You know, but as long as both parents are on the same exact page, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Then we'll come out with that great result. So I was, again, it goes back to the communicating to both parties about it and not leaving one out as you just made the final decision and that's it.
Right. That's good stuff. You want to chime in on that?
I agree. I actually have the honor of dealing with this type of subject matter, you know, quite frequently. I have a 6-year-old son, and my wife and I, we're getting to a place now where sometimes I'll just let her handle it because she can handle her own
That's
when
good.
it comes
Right.
to our son. And other times it could just be something that he may say, the way he said it, or something that he does, and I'll just intervene right then and there. I think as we journey and our son is getting older, we're
Right.
starting to understand how to balance out those moments. So sometimes I don't need to say anything.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, sometimes just the mere fact if I'm just walking into the room where they are, just my presence alone
That's good right there.
will make him
Straighten
change
up.
his whole demeanor.
Right.
So I believe in putting the fear of God in both of my children.
Right.
And when my daughter was young, somebody could say to her, I'm getting ready to call your father, and her whole
Mhm.
demeanor would change.
Right.
And it's not that I wanted her to be afraid of me, but if it had to get to that extent of somebody calling me, then obviously you're doing something that I did not raise you to do or okay for you to do.
Right.
With my son, it's the same way. So I feel like I step in when I need to step in. But if my wife feels like she needs to be the
Disciplinarian.
Yeah.
there you go. If she needs to do that, then she does that, and I'll let her handle that.
Right. I definitely don't think that it's a matter of incapability in parenting. I just think that perspectives can be different, and especially when we're talking about the sex of the child, because a mother and her son, there's a love that she has
Mhm.
that potentially can blind some things
Right.
that she would see in her daughter. The same way, vice versa, that there's
Father
some
to a daughter.
things that a father would be blinded to with his daughter that he would immediately pick up on with his son. So I think that the parenting has to be a partnership in order for it to be effective, and that the child will get the best possible parenting experience that they can have. And I think that I thank God that, I was blessed I got 6 children, and they're all with my wife. So, thank the Lord for that, because it could have been another way. But but I thank God that that's the steps that, he allowed me to travel. But it made things easier in my household because I was able to be present in all of my children's life in the house.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had 5 daughters before we had a son. And so my positioning in parenting has been different, and we've changed how we parent and all of that stuff just over the course of the years and stuff, where she was more active in the beginning and all of that, where I'm more active now and stuff like that, because the children are getting older.
Right.
And
Roles.
then, the roles and the positioning and the timing of where children are, all of that stuff, we pay attention to all of those things so that they can get the best possible experience
Mhm.
from their parents. And at the same token, we also know that women, with having girls, when girls start getting older, you start
Shift.
getting into that shift of,
Mhm.
she's starting to get grown, and now we're dealing with that, 2 women in a house type of thing, when you ain't no real woman yet, all that kind of stuff. But just that frame of, what I'm saying?
That's
Like,
good,
so
yeah.
you got to know the times and be sensitive to those things, and watch and all of those kinds of things, so that you can provide the best possible care and parenting for your children. But I think that it is important that as parents, we know our role, we know our strengths, and we know our weaknesses, and we convey them to each other as parents. And that's why it's not healthy. It doesn't matter, the fact that the 2 of you may not have worked out. You went on, you married now, but your child's father is not your husband, or your child's mother is not your wife. That's all fine. But today, you have your life with your wife, you have your life with your husband, but you still have a responsibility to this child.
That's
and
good.
You have a responsibility to make sure that this child gets the best life possible. And theoretically, children have a better life potentially when they have a parent that has married, because they now have a bonus parent. But it should strengthen the bond. But we have to become people who are mature enough to parent and understand that that is what's important,
Yeah.
not the disagreements that we had as a potential couple, or the fact that we never were a couple, whatever the situational scenario was. But what we do have in common is this child. And that's what's important. And as a group, we are going to work together to make sure that there's a united front, to make sure that this child does not slack or lack in any area just because we didn't work out, just because we aren't together, or just because that's not, what it turned out to be. But in essence, we're going to make sure that what's happening at your house is what's happening at my house. And, that's important.
And as a result of that, when a child sees 2 parents working together, it is also a legacy being left behind through the teaching of that, because when that child grow up, that's going to be the same way that they're going to be able to understand to parent their child.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when they, when it's just out there and it's just all wild cards, everything at play, I'm not going to say it's going to be all bad, because you'll have 2 scenarios. You'll have the strong child saying, you know what, I don't want what happened to me to happen for my child. And then you'll have the other child that's a little weaker that may say, oh, this is the way that it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely a thing. So let's do this. If there was something that you could share or say to someone who is married, what would be a final thought that you would give them to keep their marriage strong?
You want me to go first? I would say to the married couples out there today is don't allow outsiders in. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about, when I say outside, I ain't talking about people that, you know, don't value your marriage. I'm talking about people that care nothing about your marriage. Don't display, you know, your marriage on the table like it's a dish.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Don't just display it like it's a dish, because you're the one that has to stay with the dish and eat the dish for, you know, for the rest of your life. And then once you take that dish back in, people look at you like you had leftovers.
Good.
You know, so, you know, just keep your business with you. Take it to God first.
Right.
Take it to God first in prayer, and pray together.
Good.
Pray together, not against each other.
Good.
I would simply just admonish everyone to be the best servant that you possibly can be. Jesus himself said that he came not to be served, but for him to serve us. That simply says to me, stay in a posture where you're always willing to give,
right,
before you look to always receive. What is it that I can add to you? What is it that I can do for you this day that makes a positive impact upon you? How is it that I can comfort you in this moment? I would just say, for the last statement of this evening for me, is to love intentionally and live the good life.
Good stuff. I would say, you know, be the solution. Oftentimes we, you know, present problems. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like when you do this. I don't like, you know, this, that, and other. And we got our whole laundry list of things that we have challenges with, things that we dislike. But if you become the solution to every problem in your relationship, you won't have problems in your relationship, whether it's your fault or not. Be the solution, because the big picture is we want to be together. And whatever the scenario is, it should not be enough to make you say, I don't want this anymore. I made a decision that I wanted to be with you the rest of my life, and my life is not over, and neither is this relationship, because I'm the solution. So we thank y'all for tuning in with us tonight, and we hope that you were able to gain some nuggets, some tools that you can use for your relationship to cause your relationship to have success. We thank you all for tuning in to the Couples Corner tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all in the Couples Corner again. And we will make sure that we get these wives in here so that they can have their turn to share, and so we can hear, as men, as husbands, from some wives, and to hear marriage from the wives' perspective. So that's coming soon. You all stay tuned for that. But again, we thank you all for tuning in tonight. And on behalf of Team Bevins, the part that's here, my wife is tuning in, but tonight was the men's night. So we thank you all, and we will
Shout
see
out,
you.
love you, babe.
See you on the other side. Yeah, shout that out.
Love you, Janine.
I'm on my way home to you, sugar. You know, they say, who was that? That was Jodeci that said, you know, there's the party,
Yes, sir.
and then there's the after party. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
All right, are we done?
Well, not necessarily, because they said after the after party was the hotel. All right, but we ain't dealing with that right now. We just go. Y'all don't know nothing about Jodeci, so y'all know what we're talking about. Bless your heart, because y'all been saved your whole life. Thank you, Jesus, for you. All right, y'all have a good night.
Good job.
Good.